Hey guys, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. Today we will be talking about the useContext hook in ReactJs. What that is and why you need it. Let's start. Alright, what you see here is a simple application with a button, and whenever I click on it, the count is incremented by 1. Very basic application. And I want to use this application to show you why we need useContext. So why there's something such as the useContext hook. The useContext hook solves a specific problem, and this problem is called prop drilling. And what that is, I will show you using this simple app here. It's just a ReactJs application with a button here, and whenever I click on it, the count is incremented by 1. And what prop drilling is now is the following. Here in my app.jsx component, you see I have a child component. And this child component receives props on click and count, and it receives them so that again it can pass them into a grandchildren, and it only receives these props because then in the child component there's another component called grandchild, and these props that the child component is receiving are being passed into the grandchild component. So basically the child component receives props just so that it can pass them down again to the grandchild component. And the thing here is the child component does not really need these props, right? It just takes them and passes them down again, but it does not use them. And now imagine we would have a component hierarchy of 10, 20 components, and we always would have to pass down these props. This would be quite annoying, right? And this is what prop drilling is, yeah? And if we go to our grandchild now, we see finally we use these props. I destructured them here, so I can use them directly. And we use them here in our button, so whenever the button is clicked, the onClick function is run, and then we display the count, yeah, which comes from the app.jsx component, yeah, because it has a count state basically, yeah. We are making use of useState, and whenever we click on the button, this onClick function here is run, and the count is incremented by 1. And this is what useContext is made for, yeah? It solves the problem of prop drilling. So prop drilling is quite annoying. And now I would say, let's refactor our app and let's make it that it can use the useContext hook so that we don't have to pass down these props from our parent to our grandchild, right? Yeah, let's go. So first of all, our grandchild does not need to receive these props anymore, right? And also our child component does not need to receive any props anymore if we use useContext. So, and here in our grandchild component, we do not need to pass anything in like this. All right, cool. Going back to app.jsx, here also in our child component, we do not need to pass anything in. And now we finally can start to use useContext. First of all, let's create the context. I will create 2 contexts. We could do it with 1 also, but I just use 2. One for the count and another one for onClick. So let's say export counter context, which is equal to react.createContext. And of course, this should be const, like this. And we create another one called counter update context, maybe. Yeah. Next, what we can do is we can take our context and then wrap our child component in it. So we say counter context dot provider, and then we can provide a value, which is this count variable, like this. And of course, we have to close it like this, yeah? So that our child component is wrapped into our counter context provider, like this. And of course, here, this is wrong. There you go. And we can do the same with the other context here. Counter update context, which will provide a value called onClick. And we wrap our child component in it as well, like this. Beautiful. And here I get an error because React is not imported. So let's import it. Now that we are providing our values here, we can consume them in our grandchild where we need them, because useContext is all about providing values via this provider here. And then we will be able to consume these values in our children. So let's do this now. In our grandchild.jsx, we can say something like this now. Const count is equal to react.useContext and then counter context, like this. And also we can say const onClick, which is equal to react.useContext counter update context. So here we are consuming the context, right? We are getting these values here so that we are able to use them here. And of course, I have to import the two contexts here, but I cannot do it because I need to go back to app.jsx and make sure that I export them like this. Now I can go back to grandchild.jsx and I can import them here. And our increment functionality is working fine, but there are a few things that are not so good because we have some logic here, right? And then also we have to write all these tags, right? And provide the values here. So this makes the app component a bit harder to read and also make it more bloated, you could say, yeah. So what we can do here is we can create another file called counter context, for example, .jsx, and we can take some stuff from here and put it in here. So let's do it. We can take the useState hook and also the onClick function. I just did Control and X. Then we are coming here and we say export const counter provider, which is equal to an arrow function which receives the children. And we can pass this stuff in. What we are doing now, instead using these tags here, we will be using our counter provider, and we need to pass in children as props because this counter provider will wrap around our child component here, right? And then down below the onClick function, we can return something, and we want to return this stuff here from our app.jsx. We can take this away, Control and X, and pass it in here, like this. We can also take these two contexts here and put them in the counter context file as well. Maybe here somewhere above the counter provider, like this. Now we can go back to our app.jsx. Now in our counter context.jsx, we need to take the children and pass them in here like this, because we want to wrap this thing around our child in our app.jsx. So we say counter provider just like this. We have to import it. We put it in angle brackets, and now we just can pass in our children, which is our child component, like this. And we get an error here because we have to wrap the whole thing, or I just can take it and make it like this. Yep, because otherwise I would have to provide a fragment here, yeah, so that we just have one outer element, right? And now everything is working fine. Looks great. In our grandchild.jsx, we can do a little bit more of refactoring, because here we need to import useContext and then also the counter context. Yeah, we need to import two things, and this is not so great. We can do a little bit better. We can use Control and X on them, and then we take them and put them in here in our counter context.jsx. And now we can create hooks. Yeah, we can create two hooks. And I will create the hooks, of course, outside of the counter provider, so we can export them. I say export const useCount, which is equal to an arrow function that returns useContext. And then we pass in the counter context. And then also I make another function here. Use update count maybe. And I pass in the counter update context. Now we can go back to our grandchild. And we just can say const count is equal to useCount. And also we can say const on click is equal to use update count, like this. And everything is working. No, it's not working. We get an error now because these two here do not exist anymore in our app component, right? Because we took them and we passed them into our counter context.jsx. So we just have to throw them out here, and I get another error. Counter context.jsx. We are making use of React here, so yeah, I just need to import it here. And my bad, we do not need these two as well. Yeah, so we can delete them. And finally, another error. We need to import useState here, right? And in our grandchild, we need to import useCount and useUpdateCount. And now our counter is working again and everything is working well. Nice. So what you see here now is, although we do not pass any props to the child component here, and the child component does not pass any props to the grandchild is being able to get access to count and onClick from the grandparent component by making use of useContext. And by putting all the logic and stuff like this into a separate file here called countercontext.jsx, we are making this app component very easy to read. It's not bloated and it just contains this here, which is very cool. So we separated a bit the context logic, you could say, yeah, into a separate file, which is always good, yeah, to separate the logic into separate files. And also what we've done in our grandchild here is we made use of these hooks here that we created here, so that we do not have to import counter context and use context, right? So that these things here, these two, always stay in this file here. Yeah, that's it, guys. I hope it was a little bit helpful. And by the way, you saw at the end I made quite a few mistakes. And this is because I'm used to using TypeScript. And whenever you use TypeScript, you experience all the errors that we experience now in compile time. So you experience them, you see them here in the IDE before you run the program, right? So this is a little bit helpful. So you see your bugs right away so that you don't run into them later like we did now. This is why TypeScript is so awesome and I love it, but this was a small project, so I decided to use JavaScript. Yeah, enough talking. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next tutorial. Bye.